Bear with us. We're going to start.
These are hard times, and these times feel like this world's about to capsize. Feels like it might take a miracle to make it out alive. The clock is ticking. What do we do? Is someone listening? Help us through. Press for this world. Bring peace to its doors. Bring hope to its shores. We got to change. Pray for this world. Prayers for this world. Pray for this world. Prayers for this world. Feels like it might take a miracle to make it out alive. The clock is ticking. What do we do? Is someone listening? Help us through. Press for this world. Bring peace to its doors. Bring hope to its shores. We got to change. Pray for this world. Change it. Press for this world. Bring this to itself. It's going on red. We gotta save it. Raise up our hands and rise together. Gotta be now. It's now or never. Press for this world. We've gotta save
Our opening words are from Troy Abdul. Be thankful for the difficult time. During those times, you grow. Be thankful for your limitations because they give you the opportunities for improvement. Be thankful for each new challenge because it will build your strength and character. Be thankful for your mistakes, for they will teach you valuable lessons. Good morning. Welcome to the Lake Chapala Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. My name is Roy Haynes, and I am the producer and service leader for today's Let Us Give Thanks service. Janice Kimball will offer our message. Special thanks to Paula Odom for gathering some of the photos that we will share in our What Am I Thankful For video, which will be later in the service. I know that the images in our opening video were a little depressing. Even with the upbeat music and beautiful vocals from Jennifer Hudson, those images of events that have happened and are still happening in 2021 are shocking. Some right here in our own backyard with the mudslides and flooding that happened here at Lakeside last month. Times like these make one think, what am I thankful for? No, really, what am I thankful for? Today's service will give you a not so pretty look at the history of Thanksgiving in the United States and how giving thanks is a blessing not only to you but to others. So with that said, I want to welcome you at live from Fellowship Hall. It's our LCUUF Sunday service. Our announcements were on a slideshow before the service. If you did not see them, no worries. They will be sent out by email in the next day or so. Now, I'd like to offer a special welcome to our visitors. If you are visiting with us for the first time or returning or wanting to reconnect with us after a long absence, we invite you to say your name and tell us where you're from. If you are on Zoom, use the raise your hand feature or turn your video and wave your hand and we will ask you to unmute. If you are in the room, just raise your hand. We will start with the people in the room. Do we have anybody new this here that wants to introduce themselves?
Hello, I'm Teresa Sandy, and it's lovely to be back. It's okay for us to travel from Canada. So it's been a long 2 years. Nice to come back. I'm here with my friend Lynn, who has been my walking buddy throughout the pandemic. We each live alone, and it's been a trying time.
Welcome.
Away from that. We just returned a week ago after a long absence. We left just when COVID was developing back to our home in Gig Harbor, Washington. And after a very long drive, we're finally here, and it's wonderful to be back and watching the terrible flooding that's happening just north of us in the north of Washington and British Columbia. So keep them in your thoughts.
Do we have anyone else? Oh, it's just fine. Okay, anybody on Zoom out there? Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm Janice Kimball's sister from Michigan. And
Wow, welcome.
I'm thankful I have my little sister.
Thank you, welcome. Anyone else out there in Zoom land? Okay, I guess we'll go on. Our chalice lighting words this morning are by Barbara J. Peskin. May the glory of the passing of autumn lie about us, flesh of gold for a time, and when the dark comes and of the cold, may we remember how today we stand in glory, how we walk in the bounty heaped up on earth's dark carpet. How do we keep knee deep in and the abundance flung against the night's winter curtain. We are thankful for its coming and its passing. Please light your chalice.
We kindle this light in celebration for the life that we share.
Our opening hymn is Ye Thankful People Come. We want to welcome Linda back to lead us in our vocals. Please sing with the verses that you see on the slides. Thanks.
Come, ye thankful people, come, raise a song of harvest home. Fruits and crops are gathered in, safe before the storm begins. God our Maker will provide for our needs to be supplied. Come to God's own temple, come, raise a song of harvest home. All the people hitherfield give before a fruitful yield. Wheats and tares together sown, here for joy or sorrow grown. First the blade and then the ear, then the full corn shall appear. God of harvest, grant that we wholesome grain and pure may we.
To remind ourselves that we belong to a community which cares for each other. We do this by sharing our significant joys or sorrows in our lives. If you have a joy or sorrow to share today, please type it into chat now and we will share aloud. First, let's voice our sorrows or concerns, whatever you may be or the world may be holding on your heart for healing thoughts of caring thoughts. You are welcome to share your joy, your sorrows or concerns now. We will start with the people in the room. Do you have any sorrows in the room? What about out in Zoom land? Are there any sorrows or concerns out there?
We have none.
Excellent. Now let us recall the joys, whatever you may be celebrating, whatever evokes a feeling of joy or peace in yourself or others. Again, we will start with the people in the room to give the people in the Zoom a time to chat. Do we have any joys in the room? Good.
Hi, I'm Candy, and I have 3 joys if I can be a little greedy. I'm doing online teaching now, and I have about 10 reservations a day, so I can barely use the restroom between my classes, which is really exciting. I have a second joy that Thursday is my birthday. I was born on Thanksgiving Day, so I'm a turkey baby this year, so it's really neat. And finally, next month, I'm going to England, and I'll be gone 5 to 10 weeks, and I'm really excited about that. And I'll be going to Spain too, so first England, and then off to Spain.
Hi, I'm Trudy. I'm speaking on behalf of the care team. We have 5 gold stars, and we've been a little amiss about not publicly recognizing our gold stars. I'd like to start with Sue Kelly, who was the person who helped us find Monica's resting place. If it hadn't been for Sue, we never would have been able to visit Monica and leave flowers. And then I would like to thank Mario and Pamela for Mario stepping right in and visiting a member of the fellowship who needed a boost to get up. And between Lou and Mario, they were able to get this member up and into bed. And Pamela for reminding Mario, even though she was away, that they had a good stock of handicapped supplies in the garage. And so we've been able to really help one of our members. And finally, to Roy and David, and they're just so typical of the people that we have in our fellowship. I called, I said, we have a member who's on the floor. She fell out of bed. Can you go over and pick her up? And they said, sure. And it's just heartening when that happens.
Have any more? Do we have any joys out in Zoom land?
We do, Roy. We have one from Liz Mulder who says, I have a great joy that my dear friend Lourdes has fully recovered from her breakthrough case of COVID. After a lengthy and expensive treatment from a private doctor, she tested negative for the virus several weeks ago, and the only long-term effect so far has been a loss of appetite. The doctor said the Sinovac vaccinations that we got lakeside saved her life. One of her friends had the same experience, and her doctor told her the same thing. I am eminently grateful to whoever's in charge of the universe. We also have one from Norman Woods, who says Sharon and Norman were married on this day 40 years ago by a Unitarian minister who they brought from Los Angeles, as there were none in Nevada at the time. Happy anniversary, Norman and Sharon. That's it.
All right, thank you. And this candle from our care team represents those sorrows that are too raw, too difficult to us to share aloud. Many of us have had losses of partners, children, grandchildren, losses that remain present with us every day. So many of us have burdens, anger, fear, and frustrations, all of those things that weigh heavy on our hearts. We light this candle for those unspoken sorrows.
Good morning. My name is Robert Barnett, and I'd like to speak with you for a few minutes about why pledge at Lake Chapala UU Fellowship. Why pledge? That's the key question. I'll get back to that question in just a moment. I joined First UU of Houston about 15 years ago. I've been unchurched for probably since my mid-teens. I never attended any church services except weddings and funerals after that. And what I remembered from my from going to church in those days, contributions for a church running it were due to the collection plate, those little weekly contributions. Everything I knew about running a church could have been written on a 3x5 card, maybe even back of a business card. I joined First UU of Houston after attending several services and studying and reading some UU literature. I found that the Unitarian Universalist Church and the Seven Principles met a need that I did not know that I had. I found in Unitarian Universalists a welcoming, loving, feeling, diverse group of people united in their belief that society could be better. How important did this become to us? When my wife, Kat, and I went looking for a place to retire, two requirements. First, it had to be prettier than Houston, which wasn't too tough. And then it also had to have a Unitarian Universalist church. After joining and while working on several of the committees at First UU, I started to learn a little bit more about those budgets. And I found out that that collection plate just doesn't cut it. So back to the question, why pledge? No one is going to be sent home out of this service who does not pledge. We're not going to do it. So why pledge? For me, it's a matter of personal responsibility and faith in the church. Faith is a strange word to come out of the mouth of a Unitarian Universalist. But if you look up Webster's dictionary, faith says, first, a trust in a person or thing, right? Nothing about God. The first definition is trust in a person or a thing. Thus, it's my faith in this church, not a belief that giving money is going to save me from eternal damnation or anything like that. What's going to happen is this money is going to do a little bit to improve mankind's situation, spread a little happiness, relieve a few sorrows, not just for the members, but for the wider community we are part of. These are good things, these good deeds. But good deeds cost money. That's just an unfortunate truth. Actions take money. That is just an honest truth. If you believe that the 7 principles of Unitarian Universalists really mean something, if we believe that being part of a living, accepting community is important, putting those beliefs into action costs money. Wishing for things to be better is not enough. Rudyard Kipling, kind of not so popular these days, talked about wishing in his poem, The Road Song of the Bandar Log. For anyone who's not familiar with the Jungle Books, here is part of what that poem says. Thinking of beautiful things we know, dreaming of deeds that we're going to do, all complete in a minute or two. Something noble and wise and good, done by merely wishing we could. We are not the Bandar Log. We know that wishing doesn't change anything. Change requires action, change requires energy, change requires money. I have faith that Unitarian Universalism and the Lake Chapala Fellowship is a force for good that impacts our lives and our community. To paraphrase a quote from 2 of my favorite authors, an inability to correct all the problems of the universe does not absolve us of our responsibility to fix the ones we can. That is why I pledge. As you know, the LCUUF Pledge campaign is underway and will continue through December 5th. We're asking everyone to send in your pledge by email to treasurer@lakechapalauu.org or use one of the paper pledge forms on the welcome table and put it in the offering basket. State your pledge as an annual amount for the next fiscal year starting February 1st, 2022. Be sure to designate the currency as pesos, US, or Canadian dollars. As of Wednesday, November 17th, the pledge team is pleased to have received pledges totaling 765,100 Mexican pesos from 35 pledge units. Our pledge thermometer shows that we are slightly in excess of our goal of 750,000 pesos. However, if you have not sent in your pledge slip, please send it in as soon as possible. Thank you.
This is the time in our service that we ask you to remember that we share our gifts through pledging and donations. Instructions for payment to the fellowship are on a slide during the announcements before every service each week. For people here at the fellowship, we will pass the basket. And while you are considering your gifts to the fellowship, remember that each month LCUUF donates 5,000 pesos or more to an organization providing food aid in the Lakeside community. For the month of November, we have been supporting Operation Feed San Juan Coastline. When you pay your pledge, please add something for Share the Basket as you used to place pesos in the physical basket. You can donate in the same way you pay your pledge. Just designate Share the Basket separately or indicate what part of your donation is for Share the Basket. Your offerings are gratefully received.
And I'm thankful for my kindergarten class who made these wonderful crafts to celebrate Thanksgiving.
After the Native Americans helped the Pilgrims survive their first winter in America, the Puritans invited them to share the first Thanksgiving.
Oh, these are adorably strong.
A 5-year-old made that.
Based off of the lies that you taught them.
Excuse me?
Oh, it's not your fault. These are full of half-truths and historical propaganda.
I thought the Native Americans and the Pilgrims were like besties or whatever.
At best, the Pilgrims and Wampanoags could be described as political allies. By the time the Pilgrims showed up, not only were 2/3 of the Massachusetts tribes completely wiped out by European slave owners and diseases, the Pilgrims were constantly at war with the indigenous people and routinely tortured them.
But what about Squanto, the Native American who learned English to help out the Pilgrims?
He was actually a slave that was hauled off to Europe, and then he learned English so that he could escape.
But they did celebrate it every year, right?
Not exactly. The next one was 16 years later, and unfortunately, it was because the Puritans were celebrating the massacre of the Pequot tribe. Back then, Thanksgiving was also for families, specifically murdering them.
Okay, we get it. History's awful. The Puritans were terrible. And now we have to let our children know that the holiday started with tons of killings. Happy?
Well, we actually have just about everything wrong with the Thanksgiving myth. Definitely didn't wear these buckle hats. Didn't land on Plymouth Rock. And as for that turkey...
No, not turkey.
More like venison, fowl, and eel.
Oh! Who cares about how this stupid holiday got started anyway?
Exactly. In George Washington's 1789 Thanksgiving Proclamation, the settlers aren't mentioned not even once. Thanksgiving wasn't celebrated nationwide until 1863 when this guy declared it a national holiday during the Civil War in order to bring the country together. That's why all of our foods are from the 19th century.
So Lincoln came up with the whole Indian Pilgrim story.
Nope, that myth didn't catch on until the 1900s after we had fought and killed all the Native Americans. And then we put it into textbooks as fact. Because America. But the food is really good, and if you ignore all the terrible history, like, the murdering, the raping, the pillaging, it's still kind of a great holiday.
So the Mayflower is a lie.
Why do we eat cranberry sauce?
What about stuffing?
Is Black Friday really just a capitalist conspiracy to get poor people to buy things so we can't truly live out a populist revolt?
Or is it...
Really in America? Is this really in America?
And what about corn?
I'm never telling you the truth ever again.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Janice Kimball, and I'm honored to be here today to give the Thanksgiving Day presentation for the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in Ajijic, Mexico, the home of my heart. Today's service will focus on the misconceptions as well as the joys regarding the origin of our celebration in the United States. I love Thanksgiving, the secular holiday set aside to give thanks for our blessings, gorge on turkey, stuffing, and devour pumpkin pie. But then I'm a celebration junkie, not prone to examine any of these too closely. For is the one thing I surmise, those of us from north of the border suffer from a lack of celebration and the joy it brings to the soul. However, in a quest for truth and meaning, conscious-seeking adults have come to realize it is past time to separate the facts from the fiction in many of our celebrations. Webster Dictionary states that Thanksgiving Day is an annual holiday in the United States and Canada celebrating the harvest and other blessings of the year. But as a child, I knew that Thanksgiving was much more than that. I knew that it was about sharing and brotherhood. It was about the Pilgrims and Indians coming together in peace to share a meal. I learned that in grade school. And then again, I suppose just in case I didn't remember the lessons from that time, in junior high, I was taught the same lesson over again in American history. I remember the beautifully rendered painting of the first Thanksgiving in our history books. The setting of the illustration of that peaceful gathering in 1621 was pastoral, almost biblical in nature. The table was laden with turkey, stuffing, cranberries, and pie. I remember the black pop hats on the male pilgrims replete with buckle, their wives lovely in demure and gathered dresses. A long table laden with food, the Indians draped in lavish feathers. The only thing missing in this idyllic vision, it might seem, were the sound of songbirds. Why wasn't it pointed out to us students that the first Thanksgiving Day illustration in our history books was a fantasy? That it was painted by Jean-Louis Jerome Ferris in 1899, over 250 years after that first Thanksgiving Day in Plymouth, Massachusetts. And that the artist wasn't even English, and that the Pilgrims didn't wear hats like this, and that the Indians in that artist's painting were dressed from those for the Great Plains and not at all like those on the East Coast. Cripes, I was just a child. How would I know that what I was being taught in my history wasn't history? Now, Encyclopedia notes that American Thanksgiving is particularly rich in legend and symbolism, which includes feasting on turkey, bread stuffing, potatoes, and pumpkin pie. And I'm going to continue to quote, Plymouth Thanksgiving began with a few columnists going out fowling, possibly for turkey, but most likely for the easier prey of geese or ducks. Next, 90 or so Wampanoag Indians made a surprise appearance at the settlement's gate, doubtlessly unnerving 50 or so columnists. Nevertheless, now I'm continuing to quote Encyclopedia Britannica here. Over the next few days, the two groups socialized without incidents. The Wampanoag contributed venison to the feast and probably fish, eels, shells, stews, vegetables, and beer. Since Plymouth, Massachusetts had few buildings or manufactured goods, most people ate while sitting on the ground or on barrels with plates in their laps. This disorderly affair sealed a treaty that lasted until King Philip's War in 1675, where hundreds of colonists and thousands of Indians lost their lives. Now, in 2017, only 4 years ago, An article in the New York Times that was referencing previously lost historical documents states that there was no mention of Turkey being at the 1621 bounty, and there was no pie. Yeah. Settlers lacked butter and wheat and flour for a crust, and they had no ovens for baking. What is known for sure is that the Pilgrims harvested crops and the Wampanoag brought 5 deer. Experts agree that although there was certainly some wild fowl served along with the venison, there is no direct evidence proving that turkey, in fact, was served. The end of quote. Well, Encyclopedia Britannica, at least you didn't claim there was turkey at that Thanksgiving Day meal, but you got everything else wrong. So what about your claim that most people ate with plates on their laps? Historians universally agree that there were about 50 pilgrims at this fair, along with 90 Indians. That's 140 people. That's a lot of dishes. And dishwashing. Or did white society's version of Thanksgiving reveal that perhaps the Indians were regarded as savages, not considered as part of the people? And since encyclopedias are regarded as a source of fact, what about this surprise appearance doubtlessly unnerving the colonists? Other factual accounts of the first Thanksgiving state that the Indians were invited, and your statement of facts, Encyclopedia Britannica, implies that the Wampanoag crashed your party. Research has brought no clear-cut description of the history or perhaps even gave fabrications of Thanksgiving. Therefore, I began to research to explore our national holiday from a different point of view. Racial justice in the U.S. came to the forefront in 2020 with the coronavirus pandemic disproportionately affecting people of color and police brutality drawing attention across the United States, the U.S., and the world. In addition to these injustices is the until recently hidden history of church and civil authorities, both in Canada and in the United States, of kidnapping Indigenous children from their families and their culture to be raised as Christians. They were confined to what amounted to barrack-like conditions where they were subject to abuse and where many died and were buried in unmarked graves. Because of these recent revelations, there is a growing population with the desire to reevaluate the meaning and celebration of Thanksgiving. This dissent has created an undercurrent that we can no longer ignore. In 1970, descendants of the early Pilgrims planned a banquet to celebrate the anniversary of the landing of the Mayflower in Plymouth, Massachusetts, and asked Wamsutta Frank James, a Wampanoag Indian, to make a speech. Now here is an excerpt from that speech. Today, we must work toward a more humane America, a more Indian America, where men and nature once again are important, where the Indian values of honor, truth, and brotherhood prevail. You, the white men, are celebrating an anniversary. We, the Wampanoags, will help you celebrate in the concept of a new beginning. It was the beginning of a new life for the Pilgrims. Now, 350 years later, it is the beginning of a new determination of the original Americans, the American Indian, and we are determined in our presence here this evening is living testimony that this is only the beginning of the American Indian, particularly the Wampanoags, to regain possession of this country that is rightfully ours. It should come as no surprise that the descendants of the Pilgrims did not allow Frank James to make this speech. While his speech didn't praise the Pilgrims of the descendants, they offered to write him a different version in praise of the Pilgrims. The anger and frustration stemming from the Pilgrims' descendants' refusal to hear his speech drove Wamsutta and a group of his followers to meet at the top of Coal Hill in Plymouth on the following Thanksgiving Day. It was there on November 27, 1970, that the commemoration of the first National Day of Mourning was held. Last year, on the 50th annual observance of the National Day of Mourning, in a show of unity, Indigenous people from around the world spoke at a live-streamed event. Indigenous communities worldwide, as well as the U.S., have been disproportionately impacted from COVID-19 pandemic. This is the reason a representative of the Navajo Nation, which had been hit hardest of the tribal nations, said that in 2020, National Day of Mourning observers focused on the pandemic. Many of the indigenous peoples of America's fast from sundown on the night of mourning to remember the hardships and genocide their ancestors faced. I expect that with the unraveling of hidden crimes against indigenous children now being exposed, that this year's Day of Mourning will be particularly sad. A plaque has now been erected by the town of Plymouth, Massachusetts, on behalf of the United American Indians of New England. Here is what it says. To the Native Americans, Thanksgiving Day is a reminder of the genocide of millions of their people, the theft of their lands, and the relentless assault of their cultures. Participants in National Day of Mourning honor Native ancestors and the struggles of Native peoples to survive today. It is a day of remembrances and spiritual connection, as well as a protest of the racism and oppression which Native Americans continue to experience. Hopefully, we're on the cusp of making a retribution for crimes we had in the past denied. As an optimist, I believe that we are taking a step forward in our evolution. Yet, we cannot afford to continue to gloss over the brutal side of our humanity if we are not to repeat it. As the most dangerous and unpredictable mammal on Earth, we must come to terms with the often unthinkable deeds and atrocities that we are capable of committing. We must search for truth and meaning and question what our news feed and media tell us, lest we be brainwashed by their self-serving motives. This awareness needs to be a conscious decision because it does require some discipline and effort. We must do this to preserve the best of that which makes us human. On the brighter side, most contemporary historians now agree that the Thanksgiving celebration in Plymouth was a cross-cultural moment with food, games, and prayer. I think we can embrace these shards of fairness and idealism whenever we find them in our past and recognize them and give them credit to them and celebrate the image of brotherhood, sharing and being thankful for that which we are blessed. On this particular Thanksgiving celebration, I want to quote Keisha James, Wamsutta Frank James' granddaughter, who comes to mourn for her people with grace but not bitterness every year on the National Day of Mourning atop Coal Hill. Keisha wrote, "Try to divorce your Thanksgiving celebrations from the false mythology. Take time to learn whose land you're on. Then look into the tribe's struggle and donate to help." Thank you for the suggestions and for the reminder, Keisha. I'm living out the last quarter of my life in an indigenous village in Mexico. Their values have impacted my life. I have learned so much. I am a less selfish person because of this intervention. On a personal level, I'm overwhelmed by all that I am to be thankful for this year. Perhaps in my 82nd year of a varied and fruitful life, it was the year I was meant to die. I am where I want to be, and I have no unfinished business. But the angels wouldn't let me. I don't mean angels sent from heaven, but real life angels. Angels that go by the name of Francisco and Lorna, who spent days and nights beside my hospital bed, manned the buzzer, changed bedpans, and took care of other ghastly chores, and who emerged 10 days later when we came home looking worse than I did. Thank you. And there were yet more angels that go by the names of Catherine and Lynn, Margaret, Fernando, Teodoro, Joaquin, Luz Marie, and others too numerous to list here, and my family in Michigan who came through for me big time, and my Facebook friends who sent so much valuable energy my way. I am awed, I am overwhelmed, and I thank our national holiday of Thanksgiving for giving me the impetus and the opportunity to express my gratitude in public. I'm also very thankful this holiday season for the grace of Wamsutta Frank James' granddaughter Keisha, who spoke a year ago on behalf of the Wampanoag Indians atop Coal Hill in Plymouth, Massachusetts. She expressed that her community had no objection to us gathering for a meal together at our national Thanksgiving holiday, but rather the false mythology that surrounds us. And break a leg, fellow Unitarian Universalists of Chapala, Mexico. Bring on our slideshow. Let us be grateful for the finest Zoom team in all of Jalisco. Gracias.
Some days we forget to look around us. Some days we can't see the joy that surrounds us. So caught up inside ourselves, take when we should give. So for tonight we pray for what we know can be, and on this day we hope for what we still can see. It's up to us to be the change, and even though we all can still do more, there's so much to be thankful for. Look beyond ourselves, there's so much sorrow.
It's way too late to say I'll cry tomorrow.
Each of us must find our truth. It's so long overdue. So for tonight we pray for what we know can be, and every day we hope for what we still can see. It's up to us to be the change, and even though we all can still do more, there's so much to be thankful for. Even with our differences,
There is a place we're all connected.
each of us can find each other's light. So for tonight we pray for what we know can be, and on this day we hope for what we still can see. It's up to us to be the change, and even though this world needs so much more, there's so much to be thankful for.
There's so much to be thankful for.
There's so much to be thankful for.
Our closing hymn is We Gather Together. Follow Linda in the slides.
If you'd like to stand and join me, if you can.
We gather together in joyful thanksgiving, acclaiming creations whose bounty we share. Both sorrow and gladness we find now in our living.
Let us extinguish this chalice with these words we read together. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, or the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we keep in our hearts and share with all the world. Our closing words are a responsive reading, We Give Thanks This Day by Eugene Pickett. I will read the black type, you will please read the white type. For the expanding grandeur of creation, worlds known and unknown, galaxies beyond galaxies, fill us with awe and challenges our imagination.
Thanks for this day.
For the joy of human life, its wonders and surprises, its hopes and achievements.
Give thanks this day.
For the human community, our common past and future hopes, our wonders, transcendence, all separates our capacity to work for peace and justice in the midst of hostility and oppression.
Thanks this day.
For high hopes and noble causes, for faith without fascism, for understanding the views not shared.
Give thanks this day.
For all who have labored and suffered for a fairer world, who have lived so that others might live in dignity and freedom.
Give thanks this day.
For human liberty and sacred rights, for opportunities to change and grow, to affirm and choose, we give thanks this day. We pray that we may live not by the fears, not by hopes, not by words, but by our deeds. That was our prelude.
We can play the game, you can act out the part, though you know it isn't written for you. But tell me, how can you stand there with your broken heart, ashamed of playing the fool? One thing can lead to another, it doesn't take any sacrifice. Oh, father and mother, sister and brother, if it feels nice, don't think twice. Just shower the people you love with love. Show them the way that you feel. Things are gonna work out fine if you only will. Shower the people you love with love. Show them the way that you feel. Things are gonna be much better if you only will. You can run, but you cannot hide. This is widely known. And what plan do you do for your foolish pride when you're by yourself all alone? Once you tell somebody the way you feel, you can feel it beginning to ease. If it's true what they say about the squeaky wheel, always getting the grease, better to shower the people you love with love. Yes, and show them the way that you feel. Things are gonna be just fine if you only will. Shower the people you love with love and show them the way that you feel. Things are gonna be much better if you only will. Shower the people you love with love and show them the way that you feel. Things are gonna be much better if you only will.
These are the words that we used to say at our former church in Spartanburg, South Carolina, as we ended our service. We have spent this time together in these holy moments. Give us strength to go down the winding road until we meet again. Our service has now ended.